So my name's Chris. I'm the brewery tour guide for the Wallenpaupack Brewery. We'll give you a little history of the brewery first, and then we'll get into how we make beer, step-by-step process of how we do it here, the simple process. It's owned by siblings Becky and Chris Ryman, the brewery. They opened up September 30th of 2017, and Becky runs all the day-to-day operations of the brewery. And in about 10,000 breweries across the country, less than 2% are operated and owned by women. So it's a pretty nice feat. They grew up in the area, spending a lot of time around the lake. As they got older, they were always looking for something to do. They were inspired by their cousin who opened up Marker 48 Brewing Company in Weeki Wachee, Florida. And with Becky's love of traveling, visiting breweries while traveling, she saw it was a great opportunity for a brewery in the area, and she hit it right on the head. We've been here for over 7 years now. It's one of the best breweries around in Northeast or more, in my opinion. We started out with a 20-barrel brew house. Every brew barrel is worth 31 gallons. This brew house can make up to 620 gallons of beer at a time, give or take. Depends on what they're doing. That far machine is called the mash tun in the left there. We have a louder tun here, and we have a brew kettle up on top. So that little section is called the brew house. Behind us is, back in 2017, it was a 200-barrel cellar. So if we filled up all the fermenters and the bright tanks, it would be equal to 200 brew barrels. And remember, every brew barrel is worth 31 gallons. They started out with about 20 employees, no distribution. So if you wanted the beer, you had to come here to get it. There was no other means of getting it. And that's the most fun, coming to the breweries. They also had a 12,000 square foot facility. So the room we're in now and the room that we were just in was the only part of the brewery at that time. In 2019, they did an expansion. So that room is called the tap room, where we were just in. The far room, they added a 5,000 square foot room, and now that's called the barrel room. Outside the barrel room is a brand new 2,500 square foot outdoor beer garden. So that was pretty cool.
That must be popular in the summer.
Oh, in the summer, spring, fall. They actually have an igloo out there where you can rent, and they have a little heater in it. They're really cool. It's a lot of fun.
Parties and stuff.
You can sit in there with a private party. There's only one igloo. You rent them. They have campfires out there.
Oh, nice.
Like $100. You can rent the campfire for 10 people. Everybody gets a beer, little charcuterie board, the cheese and meat board. It's a lot of fun. Beer always brings everybody together. So now we brew over 2,000 barrels a year plus. We have about 50 employees now. Now it's a 17,000 square foot facility with a 2,500 square foot outdoor beer garden. We've been awarded in many competitions for beer awards. Just a couple of notables. We won a 2020 silver at the Great American Beer Festival for their English Pale Mild. It was really popular. In 2020 at the World's Beer Festival, we won #1 for the world's best cream ale. So if you've had our cream ale, it's #1. Recently, we just won a gold at the Great American Beer Festival again for our crew. That was about maybe a little over a month ago. That beer actually sold out, so it's not available now. But we have a Troon, which is like the dark counterpart to that. It's a darker version of the triple, and it's pretty nice. We've been mentioned in many media outlets: Beer Connoisseur, Men's Journal, Food Network, Craft Beer and Brewing, and Porch Drinking. Those are just a couple. But they're always growing. They're always finding new things. We have mug clubs. A lot of events go on here. They have a beer fusion night coming up, Asian fusion night coming up. So they like to pair meals with the little samples.
Mm-hmm.
Their events are always so popular. They've done Harry Potter in the past. People come in dressed up. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun. But now we can get into, let's pretend to make a little beer right now. But this is where we mill the grain that we're going to use in our beer.
What?
This is the mill. This is where we're going to mill the grains that we use in the beer. So this is step 1 in the process. Doing this, we're going to mill the grains that we use. Barley is the most common grain. We also use wheat, rye, oats, corn, or rice, depending on what kind of brew you're doing. But normally, there would be a pallet set up here full of grains for whatever beer they might be doing that day. So we got a guy standing here. He will start dumping in those grains. Putting it through here is going to open up those grains. We're going to crack them open to release starches that will later be converted into sugar, which will be necessary during fermentation. On the bottom of here, once those grains are cracked, this auger motor is going to push those grains right up to that white pipe, and they're going to enter the mash tun, where they'll be combined with water that we normally target between 144 and 150 degrees. So that's step one. We'll head over back to the table. I'll show you a couple of grains that we use. Just a small sample of what some of the grains they use here. So I definitely suggest, as I explain them, you smell them, because you can see the different stages of how the grains are. This is a pale malt, so this would make up the majority of a beer's grist. So this is like a base malt. This is mainly used for sugar content, not so much for flavor or colors of the beer. This is a crystal malt. These are used sparingly, but will contribute flavors and colors towards the beer, like light toffee, caramel, sometimes even intense raisin or plum flavors. This is a chocolate malt. These are processed for longer times at higher temperatures, which will give us darker colors, richer flavors, like chocolate and burnt coffee, things like that. They use these in stouts, porters. They'll do different combinations, but if you go, you can tell the difference. It's pretty neat. That process of getting all the grains in from that room takes about 30-40 minutes. Once in that mash tun, the hot water will activate the enzymes that will help break down those starches and convert them into sugar. So now that liquid and grain mixture is called a mash. It's very crucial during the mashing that the brewer keeps it at a consistent temperature. So if the temperature is off, it could have issues during fermentation. Like if the temperature was too light, the beer could be if the temperature was too low, the beer could be too light. If the temperature was too high, it could be too sweet. And that would mess up everything. Once all the grains are in, it'll sit there for roughly about an hour. That's usually the average. Once all the necessary starches have been converted into sugar, we will then transfer that entire liquid grain mixture to the ladder tun here. So I'll show you the inside of it. It's pretty good. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to separate the liquids from the solids. That's the whole purpose of the ladder tun. In here you can see there's a slotted metal grate. That's known as a false bottom. So that false bottom is going to allow the sugary liquid we just created, and it's going to fall through the grates, and the grain will stay behind.
How does it get transferred from the other one?
There's all pumps that push everything. So everything's got a pump to get it to the next stage in the brewing process.
Okay.
So, but in here, we can do a couple of things. They sparge in here at the end, where they'll rinse from the top of the grains to get all those possible sugars out that we need. And now that liquid is called wort officially. So once it comes out of there, it's wort. Now it's going to make its way to that brew kettle up on top there. So, but once all that liquid has been transferred, now we're left here with a whole thing of spent grains, it's called. So all leftover grains now. We actually donate those grains to a local farmer where he'll actually feed his livestock with it. So these grains have 3 times the amount more protein than regular feed. It's a total win. There's nothing more greener than us taking technically what would be going in garbage, and they eat it, and it's better for them. So it's a win-win for everybody. But when they're doing the emptying it, one batch I've seen it'll be like 2 big giant vats of grain. So that's only one beer. If they're doing a few beers a day, a bunch a week, that's a ton of grain for the farmer, and he loves it. Now we're gonna transfer all that water to that boil kettle. What we want to do is we want to put it into a boil for about an hour. That's the average. Once that's in a boil, that boil is going to kill all the natural bacteria that's in the beer. That bacteria is actually good bacteria. It's the same bacteria that you find in yogurt. And if we didn't do this step of boiling the beer, every beer would come out sour. So I don't like sour beer, so I'm always glad they boil. Once that's in a boil, we can start adding hops. Hops have antimicrobial properties which help naturally preserve beer. We get hops pretty much from all over the world, primarily from Germany, Pacific Northwest. There's a company, Yakima Valley Hops. They're huge, but there's thousands of hops out there. You can pretty much get them from anywhere. Just a couple of examples. When we add hops, our two beers, the cream ale and the largemouth, we like to compare to so people understand the difference of adding hops during a boil. If we add hops in the beginning of the boil, we'll get bitterness out of it. If we add hops near the end of the boil, we'll get more hoppiness out of the beer. So our cream ale will get early hop additions because we don't want it to be hoppy. And the largemouth will get later additions because we want it to be hoppy, flavor, aromas, things like that. Once near the end of that boil, we're going to put that into a whirlpool. So we're going to create a vortex in that tank. Any grains that might have escaped, you can also add hops during the whirlpool, which will increase aromas and flavors. That's primarily done in IPAs. And any of those leftovers will just fall to the bottom of the tank. So now, once we have that in a whirlpool, we can start to cool down this beer because we want to get that in the fermenter. We want to cool that down as fast as we can so we can pitch the yeast. Over here is our heat exchanger. And it's like if you've ever homebrewed, it's like a glorified wort chiller. So in there, there's little tiny layers of beer, water. This is our cold water tank that will supply that heat exchanger right here.
Is it cold?
That water will run into there and run against the beer and cool it down. If we're doing ales, we want to do between 68 and 70 degrees. If we're doing lagers, we want to do mid to low 50s because lagers have to be done at colder temperatures. So once that cold water flows through, it's kind of like we're reusing it even though it's not touching anything. So that will go straight to the hot liquor tank, which is here. Now this hot liquor tank also provides all the water for the brew house here. So any water that gets into the mash tun, ladder tun, boil kettle, it all comes from the hot liquor tank. I'll just show you, we're over here. We don't use electric heating, we use a steam heat. So you can actually see that. It's that long skinny tank in the back there in the middle of the two. Mm-hmm. So that's a steam heater. It's very efficient. And they do really good with that. So now, we've chilled the wort, we want to transfer it to the fermenter. So let's take a little walk around the other side. I like to use the same one. It's my test tank. So these are all fermenters. They're the ones with the conical bottoms. So now we're going to transfer that chilled wort into here. So now once it's transferred, we can add the yeast. That yeast is going to consume all the sugar that we created from the mash tun. Once that's done, it takes about a week to ferment an ale, 2 weeks to ferment a lager. You can also dry hop while it's fermenting. So you can add hops during fermentation or after fermentation in the same tank. You don't have to move it to do that. Yeast also has a lot to do sometimes with the final flavor of a beer. So if you've ever had our Heffenweizen, sometimes they mistake it for having banana in the beer. So that beer actually has no banana in it. It all comes from the yeast, that flavor. It doesn't take much to make a Heffenweizen. It's pretty simple, but it's kind of cool that there is no banana in the beer, but yet it has that distinctful banana taste to it. Once fermentation is done, we're going to cold crash this beer to about 34 degrees. So anything that's in there in suspension, any yeast and any hops that might be floating around is all going to drop to the bottom of the cone. Down here we can harvest it once it's done, where we can reuse the yeast in another batch of beer, or we can simply discard it and create new yeast. Here's a cool thing. You can look over here. We got a fermentation going on right now. So see the bucket right there? So right now that's releasing CO2. While it's fermenting, that's what's going to happen. CO2 and alcohol it's going to give. So that's pretty much live action right now, the one in the back. But when it's brand new, yeah, go ahead. When it's brand new, it'll look like a sludge coming out of it, a foam. But that is a sanitized solution. So what that does is it protects the beer so nothing's going to go back into that and possibly infect it. So totally good, totally safe. They can have beers in every one of these at any given time. We don't actually have a list of what's in it, only the brewers know that. But it's a pretty neat little process. So once that is done, we want to transfer this beer to a bright tank where it can be clarified and carbonated. So we'll take another walk back around the other side. So technically, this is is a bright tank, because you see it's the only one with the flat bottom. So normally the beer would be transferred from the fermenter to the bright tank, where it can just sit and clarify for as long as they need. Sometimes it could take 3 weeks total for an ale, or it could take up to 8 weeks for even a lager. Most beer in the United States is force carbonated. So over here is a carving stone, and you can actually see the red hose. So what they would do is they would hook up the air to that, and they can control their carbonation. They can make that beer however they want it carbonated. Most of our lagers are naturally carbonated. So here, now you remember the bucket with the CO2 coming out. We have you put on a spunding valve on the end of the cycle that will catch that CO2, and it will put it back into the solution, which will create a smoother mouthfeel, smaller bubbles, very smooth carbonation. Compared to like if you were drinking a Coke where it's really heavy with the carbonation, it's a big difference. Now, you notice we only have one bright tank, but these are called unit tanks. So these can be both, these are 40 barrels. The other ones on the other side are 20 barrel tanks. Now, these are called unit tanks, so you can actually ferment and clarify beer in here. So if we were gonna ferment in one, once the fermentation is done, we still want to take it out and put it in a clean tank. You don't use the same tank, you got to transfer it. So then once it's in there clean, everything will clarify on its own. And once it's carbonated, it's ready to be canned and kegged. We use 2 types of kegs, 6.5 barrels. So we also currently don't can our own beer. We have a roll. Like I was saying, we don't can our own beer. We have a mobile company that comes in, and I'll show you the machines. They leave it here because they're here so often canned. Now, normally when they do a canning day, I've never been here, but I'm assuming these are all lined up in a straight panel. So there's 3 sections to the machine. The one up on top is where they would store the empty cans with no lids. Those would be shifted to that middle machine there with the 5 white pipes in the middle. So they would go underneath there, the pipes would go inside the can, overfill the can. They want to get as much beer in that can as possible for less oxygen. The beer lasts longer. It'll push it to the end there where you see that aluminum. That will put the lid on the can. And then they'll come down this line where the lids are hooked up, and it'll put the labels on. So you can see some old labels up there from other beers that we've had. And once that's done, they put them in the box, put the plastic 4-pack cut tops on them, and they're ready to be distributed and enjoyed. I'll show you our little distribution room. That's what I was talking about before with the galley. Normally something like this would be in the mill room. This could be a beer right here. Normally they like to get it all together when they're getting ready to do a beer, so they brew Monday through Fridays, and that could be an actual beer right there, waiting for tomorrow morning to get started. Usually when you're doing a beer, it takes about 6 hours in here to do one. You know, that's a brew day. And if we're going from grain to glass for an ale, it could be up to 3 weeks, and for a lager, it could be up to 8 weeks. But it depends what beers they're doing. Everything can change a little bit. But here's our distribution room over here. This is where we keep our hops. Give you a little look at that. I normally don't show everybody that, but that's where they store the hops. Actually smell good now. It does. Good smell. These are old beers we've done in the past, so old labels. Some labels come back, some we never see again, but it's really cool where you can see like the history of the brewery. This is that one I told you about, the 2020 with the silver and the gold, the English Pale Malt.
This is the one, right?
So yep, it's a lot of cool labels.
Yes,
It's pretty awesome. And I'm glad you got your jacket on because it's pretty cold in this one. This also, just for giggles, this is our pilot system. So that English Pale Malt was actually brewed on this system,
Oh.
This is a 1-barrel system, so this will make 31 gallons. And sometimes they'll use it for testing. Sometimes they'll use it, they have like an employee competition during the summer, which is really cool, where the employees work with the brewers and they try to create their own beer, and they have a big competition about it. So it's a lot of fun. I believe they use that for that. But most of the time when they come up with ideas to do a new beer, it'll go straight to the brew house and they won't even mess with this. This is only on occasion, so. But it's pretty cool. We got another room over here where the beer that we're drinking outside is tapped from this cooler over here. We store a lot of stuff outside. We'll take a quick peek. So this is where the grains are stored for the beers. Then they got food, other stuff out here, but that's the majority of the grains. Cool. Hops are stored inside in that fridge I showed you. Cool. So technically, those is where they'll put all those spent grains and deliver them to the farm. So they'll just pull it in here on the pallet. Remember before with Becky's cousin in Wickiwashi, Florida? So that's her cousin, Marker 48 Brewing. So very important. I hear it's an excellent brewery. In fact, somebody told me yesterday that it's been down there. So you know when you sit at the bar? You know when you put those little bar mats? So technically it's like a cooling table. And it goes all around the bar. So if you put your beer on it, it's frosted. It actually keeps the beer cold. Really cool. I need to see. But here's where they tap all the beers. So all of these kegs go to this bar right here. We got the big kitchen in the middle. You know, you can actually see from the register. And then, like I said, the other barrel room has another room just like this for that bar in the back there. And then you got the igloo. The big glass wall back there. You can see the igloo if you wanted to put that on.
Definitely, yes.
They got some fire pits, but there might still be some snow out there. Nobody's been out there. I think I've seen the igloo ran once, but that's pretty much it. I think you guys are coming in.
Just to recap, you said how long does it take to make, let's say, yesterday I had hard pressed.
Yes.
How long it will take to make?
So that's a lager. That could take up to 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Yeah, it could be a little less, but that's usually the max time. Okay. Because it's a lager, it needs to be done colder, longer, so those flavors can impart, dissipate. So if you do it too soon, it could have a lot of off flavors.
There's a science behind it, I guess.
Oh
it's
yeah, and the brewers here are excellent. Logan is the head brewer. We got Little John. We call him Little John, but he's big. He's not little. Then we got Kyle and Brad. Those are the 4 brewers back here. And they're always slamming it. They really. I was a fan of this place before I worked here. I've only been working here since the end of August, but I've been drinking here ever since they opened day 1. And I've been to a lot of breweries. We have little beer clubs, stuff like that. But it's fun. Breweries are fun. It brings everybody together. You notice there's no TVs. A lot of breweries these days don't put them in because they want you to socialize. So I think it's a great idea. So it's awesome to be able to sit next to somebody and, hey, how you doing? What are you drinking? And that's how things get started. That's Molly, supervisor.
Hi, Molly.
Molly. But it's fun and beer brings everybody together, so we'll take you back to the barrel room.
They just started it this weekend.
This is our kitchen. So back there, that's for the food. We always get a band on Sundays. This is the barrel room. This was the extension in 2019. They just started doing these pinball machines, so it's a lot of fun for the kids when they come in. We'll head to the back. bar for the barrel room. And that door is like the other cooler that we were just in. That's heaven. This is it's not open. But out there you can see the igloo. They rent those out. They put a heater in it. And then they got the fire pits outside. Everybody can rent it, take fire and stuff like that. You know, that's pretty much it.
Amazing.
I hope you enjoy.
Amazing.
It's fun. We got a good crowd.